Hello, welcome back to another video on Vedic astrology. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about how important the time of birth is whenever it comes to Vedic astrology. The time of birth is the most important input with which we expect to get very good predictions as the output. As with computers, garbage in and garbage out holds good even for Vedic astrology. But the time of birth alone is not the issue. There's one more factor which may have escaped the attention of those who have less knowledge of astrology, is the fact that there is a debate going on regarding the Ayanamsa. Which Ayanamsa is the correct one? And if you keep changing the Ayanamsa, you also get different horoscopes, even if you do not change the time of birth. But in this video, let's concentrate only on the time of birth. What exactly is the time of birth? Before 50 years, most people, when they went to the astrologer, they always said, I was born somewhere around noon time. Not sure my mother said this, my father said this, and so on. Nothing was recorded. Most probably it was not recorded. They used to always say close to midnight, close to maybe sunrise time. Obviously, because the watch that we know of today came so recently, so for hundreds and hundreds of years, or maybe thousands of years, people did not have the clock or the watch in the first place to note down the time accurately. Of course, in India, the members of the royal family had certain devices that allowed them to tell the time of birth accurately. There were astronomers in the palace. Even in the night time, they could calculate the time exactly to the minute. For the rest of the population, time of birth was never recorded. However, during the past 50 years, we have noticed that the time of birth has been recorded. But even then, they're not very sure, because people normally in the hospitals or wherever the birth is happening, people are not so much concerned about the time of birth. They're worried more about the safety of the mother, the child. And then when everything is settled, they look and say, okay, what's the time? And then they tell the time of birth. And that's usually why I always tell people that the real time is most probably behind the noted time. Unless, of course, there was a person holding a clock and waiting, and then finally noting down the time. In that case, you'll have to go exactly with the time of birth. Otherwise, you always, in case there is a doubt, let's say someone says 7:15 or 7:30, I'm not very sure, then always start with 7:15 instead of 7:30, because as I said, the reporting of the birth time is always later and never before the birth of the child. This horoscope belongs to one of the greatest prime ministers of India, Mrs. Indira Gandhi. And you can see that over here in this particular portion of the sky, which is called Cancer or Karkataka, you have the Ascendant. So for that, you can see this is the Ascendant, the Lagna, 27 degrees, Cancer. It is in Aslesha Nakshatra, 4th path. Now, if you look at this horoscope, you will see that the Lord of the 1st and 7th have exchanged, and Saturn is an unfriendly planet for this person. Whenever there is pressure on by Saturn and Moon on the 1-7 axis, there is a possibility of losing the husband. And you can also see here Mars is in the 2nd, causing Mangal dosha. Mars, the Yoga Karaka, occupies the 2nd house, and there is an exchange between Mars and the Sun, the Lord of the 2nd, with the Yoga Karaka. There's also the exchange of Jupiter and Venus, Parivartana Yoga. There's the exchange between Moon and Saturn. In just one horoscope, 3 sets of Parivartana. Using this example to tell you how important the time of birth is. For example, in this chart, we have used the time of birth as 23 hours and 11 minutes on November 19th, 1917. And let's click female. And then Allahabad is the place of birth, and then OK. So this is the birth time. This is the horoscope. Now, if you look at this, the moon sign is Cancer, and the nakshatra is Uttarashada, the 21st star. If you change the date of birth, let's do a small thing like maybe I'll increase it to 20. November 20, it's actually done for November 20, 1917. But you'll see that there is no change at all in the chart. The moon alone has moved to the next nakshatra, Shravana, and apart from that, there is no difference at all. The moon continues to be in Makar Rashi, and even one day before when she was born, it was Makar Rashi only, and even the next day it is Makar Rashi. But if you look at the dashas, in the previous horoscope, which is an accurate horoscope, the first dasha was not of that of the moon. She started with the sun dasha because she was born in Uttarashada, and therefore, as you go through this, the entire, you'll notice a big change in the dasha scheme, complete change. Apart from that, there is nothing else which is different in both the charts, at least from the point of view of the Rasi chart and the Bhava chart. Of course, if you go to divisional charts, the moon's position could change. That's one thing. So let's go back to the original date of birth. So we are back. Let's keep checking this. Uttarashada Nakshatra, third pada. Suppose she was born, let's say 2 hours before. So we will subtract 2 hours and enter 21 hours 11 minutes and click OK. You find that the chart remains the same. The Rashi chart remains the same. You can also see that Lagna is just on the border, because you can see Lagna is at 1 degree, and therefore if I go back and change just about 3 minutes less, it doesn't change. So let's try again, maybe 5 minutes, doesn't change. So let's say 21 hours. Find here in the chart there is a complete change in the planetary positions. The Lagna shifted backwards, and this is close to the border of the two signs. If a person is born when the Lagna is in such situations, changing the time of birth by a small interval of time can make a very big difference. So let's say if a person comes to me and says, I think I was born at 21 hours and 5 minutes, I'll cast the horoscope and I'll find that the ascendant is Cancer. And I'll also notice that the Lagna is on the border. I will tell the client that, are you aware of the fact that if you reduce your time of birth even by a minute, there will be a big change in your horoscope? The friends become enemies, the enemies become friends. What I mean is that for each Lagna, there is a set of friendly planets and the inimical planets. The logic completely changes. The Lagnadipati, or the planet owning the Lagna, in case of Mrs. Indira Gandhi, is the moon. Whereas if I change the time of birth by just 1 minute from here, instead of 5 minutes, I make it 0, or let's say I make it 3, 21, 3, and click. The ascendant has gone backwards and it is now at 29. So first of all, the time of birth is very important, extremely important for all those people who have their Lagnas on the border of two signs. There will be a kaleidoscopic change, a complete change, so much that not a single point will match. Whereas once you get into the Lagna, so let's start all over again. This time we have brought back the original horoscope. 2311 is the time of birth. You can see that over here in the natal chart. The inputs are given here. And now the point is, if the Lagna is right in the middle, then you need not be so much worried about the time of birth. Whereas here it is close to the border of the next sign, 27. So if you increase the time of birth by, let's say, 20 minutes, maybe 20 minutes is 31, the ascendant has shifted from Cancer into Leo. So within a period of 2 hours, roughly, approximately, you don't have to expect so many changes. If you're on the border of two signs, then every minute counts. That's the first observation. But once you go within the Lagna, are we saying that the time of birth is not at all important? No. That's not true, because In the Bhava chart, there will be a lot of changes. For example, let's note here, Saturn is in Ascendant and Mars is in the second house, third house, fourth house we have the Sun, the fifth we have Rahu and Mercury, the sixth we have Venus and the Moon, seventh is empty, not like Moon in the seventh, Moon is in the sixth house, and then Jupiter stays in the same place in the 11th house. Suppose you alter the time of birth, let's say by 1 hour. You will notice that the chart remains the same, but do you see some differences? Some planets have moved in the Bhava chart. Sun, which was here in the 4th house, has come into the 5th, and the Moon has come back into the 7th Bhava. Jupiter stays in the same place. So do not take things for granted that your time of birth is accurate. Try different times of birth and note down the positions of planets in your horoscope, in the Rashi chart, the Bhava chart, and also notice the position of planets in the Navamsa chart. Navamsa is specifically for marriage, and Dasamsa is for profession, your livelihood. Saptamsa is for children. Dwadasamsa is for your parents. So if you look at the various chakras, you can choose whatever you want to be here by just right clicking and then selecting any of them here. Higher divisions are here: Trimsamsa, Nakshatramsa, then Siddhamsa, Vimsamsa, all those divisional charts. People went into divisional charts mainly because every scientific astrologer always questioned, how come if the Rashi chart is the same and does not respond so much to time of birth except if it is on the border, then what else can cause the differences between the twins, though they are triplets, though they share the same Rashi chart, which is the most important chart. But if you have a look at the Bhava chart, there will be some differences for smaller time for changes in the time of birth. And also in the divisional chart, you will find the Lagna shifts and gives different kinds of experiences to the twins. So if you are asking how important is the time of birth, then this is the answer, that it is really important. It's always better to get the time of birth as accurate as possible, at least for the future generations. Because if we are to improve the quality of predictions and our understanding of Vedic astrology, then the first input obviously is the time of birth. Place of birth is quite easy, and the date of birth is also quite easy. So only time of birth is the most where you'll have to pay a lot of attention. And once you get it, you have an accurate horoscope for the rest of your life. So please do not deny this input for your children and your grandchildren. So let's get back to the horoscope of Mrs. Indira Gandhi and check the Dasha, Vimshotri Dasha, and I'm now clicking here on Saturn Dasha, and she was assassinated in the year 1984. It happened in Saturn Dasha and Rahu Antardasha. Saturn Rahu, as you all know by now, if you had watched my video on Saturn Rahu, it's a very troublesome period in general, but for a Karkadaga Lagna person, Saturn becomes the Marakadhipati, the planet indicating death, and Rahu, Maharishi Parashara in volume 2, before he starts expressing his views on the Dashas and Bhuktis, he says that Rahu is the owner of Aquarius or Kumbha. Rahu co-rules Kumbha Rashi. Therefore, Rahu is the 8th lord. That is one point. And then if you look at the actual position of Saturn and Rahu, they are in Sashtashtaka to each other, meaning that from the Dashanath, Rahu is in the 6th house. Saturn is Lagna is usually is a threat to the lifespan. It is called the Maranasthana. Each planet has got its own point. Saturn in Lagna is usually a nominee planet for longevity issues. And Saturn is also the lord of the 7th and the 8th, and Rahu is the lord of the 8th. So she was assassinated on October 31, 1984 at New Delhi. So in conclusion, I would like to tell you that the time of birth is very important, and Without that, there is no way we can make any progress in Vedic astrology. When there is a confusion about the time of birth, then obviously your astrologer is going to tell you that there is something called birth time rectification, which means the astrologer experiments with various times of birth and then keeps separate horoscopes are made, and then he keeps looking at the various events, or at least the major events that happen in your life, and somewhere he will say that in this horoscope most of the events are indicated, and maybe this is your right, this may be the accurate time of birth. One reason why birth time rectification cannot be done so accurately is because not all events are indicated by your horoscope. Some events happen because of free will of this life, and only if an event has happened as per past life, which is karma, only then it will be reflected in the horoscope. So this is also a point to be considered. Who should do the birth time rectification? In my opinion, each one of you, if you have your time of birth, if you have doubts in time of birth, I think that you should actually do this by yourself. Let's say you think that you're born somewhere between 7:30 and 8 o'clock. And if it is half an hour, you can generate a horoscope. So easy nowadays. For every minute from 7:30 to 8, keep all of them on the sides, and with all the divisional charts and the Bhava chart, keep experimenting. Take up one horoscope per month and keep looking at it, referring books, and then somewhere you will understand that there is one particular minute where most of the things tally. Download Jagannatha Hora and just feed in the date of birth, any date of birth, and keep shifting every 2 hours. Then you will see the Ascendant or ASC, the first house here, keeps shifting every 2 hours. So then you will know from this that the most important reference point in your horoscope is the Lagna, that is directly related to your time of birth. And therefore we give less importance to moon sign or sun sign, because the moon stays in one sign for 2.25 days and the sun stays in one sign for a month. So the fastest thing that moves in the sky is the ascendant. And then keep changing the time of birth and look at the divisional charts and notice the changes that you see in the divisional charts. I'm sure you have many questions running in your mind, and whatever it is, please type them out in the comment section, and whenever I find the time, I'll answer them for you.